just pulling up the minutes.
Yes.
I, at this point, would like to convene our ad hoc meeting. And we do have a quorum, right? Barely. 3 is a quorum. All right. And so our first order of business tonight is to approve the last meeting's minutes from, I believe I just pulled it up, July 7th, right? When was that last one? July 20th.
20th, yeah.
So do
I
we
make
have a motion?
I make a motion to approve them.
I'll
Okay,
second it.
Tracy. Seconded by Chrissy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Leanne, if we're going too fast at any point with, because it's hard for you to keep track of multiple screens, I bet. So just ask us to slow down if you didn't get what you needed.
Thank you.
All right. So the order of business tonight is to go over some plans updates from Chad, and we have our eye getting ready for the Conservation Commission meeting tomorrow night. So Chad, with that, why don't you tell us where we're at right now?
Sure. Abby, do you want me to jump in or do you want to preface anything?
No, I think generally speaking, just go ahead. I think, you know, as Mim said, we really want to talk about where we are in permitting, what is going on with the design, and some of the explanation for some of the impacts to wetlands and how they relate to improvements on the site in terms of water quality and some of the function of the wetlands, and how that relates to temporary impacts during construction versus permanent impacts of where the paths are. And Chad will take you through that. We also want to talk about what is likely to be a public hearing schedule with the Conservation Commission and their inland wetlands function. So Maureen can talk a little bit about the regulatory process and where we are in that. And Chad can talk a little bit, and I can talk a little bit about what is we are hoping the committee is able to do in terms of providing some support and helping the commission in its deliberations on the application in front of it right now understand, you know, the work that's gone into the plan so far and the community vetting and support that we've garnered for the project as a whole. So that's, I think, Chad, if you kind of give us an overview of where we are in the permitting status and what the plans look like and what you'll be kind of presenting tomorrow, that'd be great. And then we can talk about where that leaves us with the committee actions.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that now.
Yep.
All right. Can you see my pointer on it as well?
Yep.
Perfect. Excellent. All right. So I don't know if you've seen these. These are the wetland plans that we submitted to the town back on the 23rd. So that's just the cover sheet. This is the survey, which you've seen. It has been updated. This was right before we were submitting. If you'll recall, there was some additional information that we needed around the periphery. So I'm just pointing out that the playground and the bathrooms and some additional topo and things like that were picked up, which we needed for the submission. So that's in there. This is an additional piece of the survey, just getting a little bit further up into the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
We included a whole bunch of notes. I'm not going to go through all these, but there's everything from kind of our typical general notes to pedestrian controls during construction, the tree protection plan during construction, the wetland water course avoidance and minimization measures, the wetland restoration plan, environmental best management practices, S&E controls, demolition, layout, grading. So a whole bunch of notes there that I'm not going to go through right now, but they're there and present. And just some more notes and our typical legend of all the different symbols that we have in the plan set. What I'll do just real briefly, effectively, there's been very little change since the last time we met. Planimetrically, everything is where it was previously. The walks are the same. We've made a minor tweak up here where the walk connects to the playground just for a grading perspective. The forebay that we've talked about, that's been there, all the walks are there. It was really just a matter of calculating impacts and trying to minimize them and finish all the details. So this is our erosion and sedimentation control plan with all the different measures that we're putting in throughout the place. And what I will point out on this plan, as we've talked about, the moving of the muck, the dredging of the pond. We've located here as we go to start dredging the pond, we're moving that muck to a first stockpile within the pond. Then we're moving it to the secondary dewatering right outside of the pond. And then we're taking it up the hill to its kind of final dewatering area adjacent to the skate park, which is right there, and the police station, as we've talked about. And so that's that 3-stage move. The other thing that might have come up since July, in our dewatering plan, before we had a silt sack down here to pump all the water through and deal with turbidity. We've now made this a much more robust settling detention basin. It's a 2-cell process, so the water gets pumped out of the pond, it goes into a large settling area, filters through a stone check dam, if you will, into a secondary settling area before then eventually being released through 2 different measures back into the stream and going downstream. So Brandon, our engineer from Yantic River Consultants, came up with a bigger, more robust area just to make sure we can be as careful as possible when it comes to that dewatering activity and making sure we're not sending anything downstream. Otherwise, you know, like I said, planimetrically, everything is staying the same. Here's a bunch of details on how we could do a well point dewatering area. This is just the sedimentation erosion control details for the most part. Site demolition. Again, hopefully nothing drastically new. All these hatched areas are where we're having to strip topsoil. All the X's are trees to be removed. This is the area next to the pond that we've talked about that's over vegetated that we're going to thin out and selectively remove the small and overpopulated trees to thin it and reduce the amount of vegetation falling and getting back into the pond. And then you can just see kind of the area of influence. I'll note that, you know, we have noted, if I can zoom in a little bit, might make it a little easier for you. I can do that. The notes, there's the existing sign we're salvaging for the moment. The existing memorial, the monument that we're going to reuse and build back into the plaza down here. And this is the area where it's currently wooded, and we're going to be removing all those trees to improve the visual access. So again, I don't think anything new that we've talked about from a committee perspective, but just getting into the details of how we have to do it. This is the improvement plan, similar to what you've seen effectively all along. There's just some more detail in here. I'll point out on the walkway down. So this is the playground. This is the existing walk to the bathroom. So the walkway that now comes down the hill, we've added some drainage features along there because we do anticipate quite a bit of runoff coming down there. So we're accommodating that. We had some grading things to do down here. So there's some existing stone wall or existing large stones we're lining to make a stone wall to kind of minimize the amount of grading we have to do. The boardwalk, the concrete path. We've hatched some areas, that one in particular, and another one over here. These are the concrete areas where we have wetland soils below or adjacent to where the walk is doing, and we're just highlighting those because we are doing a little bit more of a robust base underneath of them so that we can make sure that the soils support the walkway and we don't have settling issues down the road. And then the one new thing I'll point out, this came about in discussions with Rich Janarski, the wetland scientist. Within the pond, we've added some habitat restoration features. And so we have these basking logs that we've set up a couple along the edge, both kind of connecting to the edge of the pond as well as float or out stationed in the pond. These are for turtles, amphibians to be able to crawl up on out of the water. Same thing with rock. And we've made some nesting islands for nesting birds to be able to have a place of respite out within the pond. Rich thought this would be a great addition as we did environmental improvements to the overall pond and water quality. We thought it was a great idea. We positioned quite a few of them, as you can see, kind of along the boardwalk. Again, for that visual and educational opportunities, and just thinking of how kids walking along the boardwalk would love to see the turtles and the frogs and everything like that. The exact placement of this we will work out as we're actually doing the construction. Right now, we've pushed it far enough away to where we hope for the most part it's out of an area of disruption, so that if the turtles are basking on the log, it's not 2 feet away from the boardwalk and they're going to all flee apart. It's far enough out that they can continue to bask and the kids continue to watch them. So that's kind of the only real improvement that we've made to the pond. This is the grading plan. Again, from a high level perspective, very little has changed. We got the additional grading that we needed up in here to make sure we can make ADA access. From a committee perspective, what you should really be aware of is we do have this connects right up to the corner of the playground. It is fully ADA accessible, meaning below 5% all the way down this hillside. And then the entire walk all the way around it is really like 1 to 2% for the most part. So very flat, very easy to do. Then we come across, we have a slight ramp up to get up to the elevation of the boardwalk. And then obviously the boardwalk is level all the way across until it connects back. So the goal of attaining a universally accessible trail is we definitely were able to achieve and make that entire loop. Otherwise, we did finalize the grading on this hillside. That's another potential thing that we finalized since we last saw the plans. There's a level area, kind of a steeper slope, and then a softer slope down. We know we're going to disturb this whole area as we take out the trees and open it up visually. This is where we're doing our construction staging and that sediment basin for the subgrade of the pond. So we've given the grading plan to kind of make that a more even transition all the way down the hill. So visually it looks more appealing. It's easier for people to be able to walk back and forth. And this is where we expect sometimes when this area needs to be mowed in the future, they can come in here and make it back and forth along that hillside much easier with that current grading plan. The next two, this and the following plan, are the dredging plans for the pond. As we've talked about, because of budget constraints, we have kind of what our bare minimum of dredging, and that's this plan. I think you're all aware that the contaminated soil of the muck, this is that area we're leaving alone. So that's why the contours kind of bulge out there, because that's the area we don't touch. This represents us scraping the muck out of basically the entire pond and a few inches here or there, depending on the base of the subgrade. And then that center where the town is purchasing a new linear aerator, we're creating a 2-foot deeper zone right in the middle for that aerator and to get that deeper pocket of water to hopefully keep the pond at a cooler temperature. So this represents that, what I'll call the base dredge opportunities, which is effectively removing all of the muck except for the contaminated area, and then slightly reshaping the bottom, but not very much.
Cliff, is that going to affect the rest of the pond though down the road if you don't take all of it out?
Well, we're taking all the muck out, right? So this gets us back to better than it was when it was new, is how I'll say that, right? So it gets us back to slightly deeper than when it was first built, and it gets us a deep spot in the center to keep the water cooler. So it gets us another, at the very minimum, it gets us another, 60 or 70 years of use out of the pond before we have to worry about dredging again.
But Chad, the pudding is coming out of the entire pond,
Correct.
correct? It made it sound like you were leaving that stuff up at the north end, but that's not true. The stuff we're leaving there is that little subsoil stuff that has pollutant in it.
We will confirm, but the last conversation I had, all of it was staying. We weren't touching the muck there either.
But then how are we going to push the material out that end and not touch the stuff?
We come out the edge over here and
Okay.
lift it across. Yeah, but that was the area, that was that number 2 area where we were told not to touch anything. So that's why that little peninsula still exists.
Chad, who told you not to touch anything?
That's our licensed environmental professional, the LEP, who did the environmental
Okay.
testing there.
Okay, just double checking who the they was.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody who knows more about contaminated
Yeah,
soils
yeah.
than I do. Yeah.
I just was wondering if it was, wetlands or somebody, but no.
Nope, no, 100% based on, again, that grid of testing that we did.
Okay,
And all the results that came back. Again, knowing most of that muck, what we found, just to refresh, was that it has some contamination within it that we can remove, but we have to handle it appropriately and we have to dispose of it properly, meaning we can't just get rid of it on, town property somewhere else. And this was the one area that was recommended we just leave in place.
okay,
And just leave it there, and everything else, all the rest of the muck comes out, and then the bottom gets slightly regraded.
I think it's where, I think it's where the lead is. No, it's not mobile. the way it is.
So then, if budgets, prevail and diesel prices drop and all that good stuff, this is the optimum dredging plan. So this basically, I'll flip back to the other one. Again, you can see the shape. This is the optimum depth. Basically, what we do is just expand that optimum depth out to here. So we get a much larger area of deep water in the center. Again, it's only about 6 feet deep, so it's not extremely deep, but it's deep enough to stay cooler. We do provide a shelf all the way around, so we have kind of the first 5 feet we don't really touch. We take out the muck, but that's about it. Then we sculpt down. Then we have a shelf, which is right at that optimum level for aquatic plants to be able to live along that shelf. And then we go down another 3 feet to a little bit deeper water. And again, have that aeration in the center. So this would be the hopeful plan. We put it in there just so that the wetland committee understands that there's kind of an either or scenario. So they know everything. These are our sections through the pond. So I'll jump back. So we have a section cut right through here, and then another section going the long way. So this top section is through obviously the area over the pond, the little outdoor classroom. And I will try to zoom in a little bit. So you can see the water level. That top dash line is kind of where we are today, the bottom of the muck layer. This is where we dredge down to, and you can see the deep area in the center. And then that darker gray bottom would be if the full-blown plan, if we were to dredge it the full depth that we'd like to. So those are the different layers. Both for that section, and then this is the long section looking north-south throughout. And we have the enlargements of how we want to do the shoreline condition and kind of the different marginal areas of the water and what we'd be planting in those different zones. So this one, what I'm going to actually do, I'm going to switch. This is our wetland disturbance area. This is what wetlands will care about the most. And I'm going to switch to our colored plan real quick. Same plan, just has a little bit of color on it to help out, and we're actually probably going to add a little bit more color on it before tomorrow to make it a little bit easier for the commission tomorrow night. What we're looking at here is everything that's shaded green is a wetland soil, and then the hatches on top of that green are the different disturbance areas. They're all labeled, as you can see, T5, P4, T4, and that's tied to a key down below so that we can tell which each disturbance. Anything with a T is a temporary disturbance. Anything with a P is a permanent disturbance. And the commission, that's one of those things we have to tell the difference between a permanent disturbance to a wetland and a temporary disturbance to a wetland. So I'll zoom in and kind of pan around and explain different areas, and I'll start down here because this is just where we had called things. Started one and we worked our way around the pond. So Area P1, this is a permanent disturbance. This is the concrete walkway as it comes into that wetland area. Again, reminder, this entire area that was flagged as wetlands is an existing lawn today. And it is not, you know, a wetland of high quality. It's basically just a wetland by soil and not by activity. The sidewalks come in on either side. We minimize the amount of grading that we had to do around them. Over here, as we had to ramp up to get to the boardwalk, that's why this got a little bit wider, because there's a little bit of fill necessary to get up. And so that's the area of the first area of permanent disturbance. And then we have a temporary area to either side of it. So T1, again, this is existing lawn. It will get disturbed because when we do construction, that's where we're going to have dewatering. We're going to have construction activities going back and forth. When we're done, it gets restored back to a lawn again. So that's why it's temporary. We're not doing significant grading in it. We're not changing anything. It's lawn today. It'll be lawn when we're done. Area 2, T2. Again, we're expecting some mobility of machines and things like that. We know this is going to get slightly disturbed. Additionally, this is where we're going to plant that wet pollinator meadow, right? So from the very beginning, we've talked about making this a beautiful example of what a wetland area could be. So right now it is just a mowed lawn, and it will be a really nice wetland functioning as a wetland when we're done. So we're making an improvement there, but it is technically considered a temporary disturbance. As we go up, T3 is the area underneath the boardwalk. Again, what we've talked about from the beginning, the only real, I'll say, quality wetlands we have on site is this stretch along the eastern edge of the pond. We've known that, and that's why we're choosing to do the boardwalk, so that we don't have very much permanent disturbance along that edge, and the boardwalk can span over the top. However, when we construct it, we know we're going to have to mat out there for the machines to get across. We are doing helical piles, so you're driving in piles, and then installing the boardwalk on top. So it is a temporary disturbance during construction. As we go through there, there's an area called P2. That is actually, so each of those piles that I mentioned, the helical piles, when we drive those in, technically that little 6-inch circumference of pile that's sticking out of the ground when we're done, that is a permanent disturbance to the wetlands. So we had to classify every single, or quantify every single post that we have along here and add them up. And that adds up to our P2 area of 20 square feet of helical piles touching the ground. So that's what that P2 is. P3, if you'll recall, we've talked about reshaping this edge of the pond slightly. It's wavy and ununiform. We have a slight berm there from when it was originally dug and from machines going back and forth. And so we're smoothing that berm out so that we can provide better access in and out of the water for amphibians. And we're realigning that edge to line up with the boardwalk, so that from an educational perspective, as people are walking down here, you get to experience wetlands, actual wetland plants on both sides on the boardwalk. And by the time you get out here, you have open water on one side and can see everything happening there. And you have wetlands on the backside and can experience that as we walk all the way along. So that P3 area is what is currently the edge condition of the pond, and it's going to become part of the pond when we're done. So a slight pond expansion there. This P4 area, again, there's some grading that has to happen as we come down the hill. We actually come all the way down. We have to come back up slightly to get to the elevation of the boardwalk. So there's some grading that happens along here. And then additionally, on this edge of the boardwalk, we wanted the boardwalk to be flush with the ground besides, so that if you're coming straight down the hill, this is all mowed grass under the trees, you could walk onto the boardwalk from the edge. So there's some grading that happens. And so that P4, that permanent area of disturbance, is the grading that happens underneath the boardwalk and in order to get up to the boardwalk elevation. And then we have just a temporary disturbance adjacent to it because of the construction activity that happens around it. Up here, and then a really small, this P4 area is basically where we have to put the footings in for the bridge on the far side. So a really small amount of area, but you have to have something for the bridge to rest on. So there's a small area of disturbance there. The T5 area, is, again, as we construct the new forebay up here, we have construction access that has to get up there. We know we're bringing machines in both from this side and from this side. And as the machines have to get back and forth, because we didn't want to bring them in through the playground or the gazebo, they're going to just, as they track back and forth a little bit for that construction work, that's our temporary disturbance there. Up within the detention basin itself, the existing basin did get flagged as having wetland plants in it. And so because we're digging that out and reconstructing it, those wetlands by plan, they go away and then they'll eventually come back again. And so that's counted as that permanent disturbance up there when we reconstruct that forebay and the filter for the pond. Coming along here, this area T6, this is a temporary area. Again, that's where our secondary dewatering of the muck. So as we bring the muck up through the pond, we had an area here and then we push it over here before we're taking it up the hill. It's an existing lawn area now. It remains an existing lawn when we're done, but it'll have a temporary disturbance where we dewater. This small little area here is, again, as the trail comes around the corner, there's some grading that happens in there, very minor. We're talking like 6 inches of grading. And so that impact gets counted as a permanent disturbance, even though at the end of the day, it's going to be a lawn area. The walk itself is outside the wetlands, but the grading happens to just go in.
In the wetlands.
Yep. As we continue around, same thing here, where as the walk continues, as you'll recall, way back when, at one point we had the trail all through here. We relocated the trail to the outside of the wetlands. There's a small fringe there that's just a grading issue. Again, about 6 inches of grading that we have to just accommodate to make sure that our path is level and flat. This temporary disturbance, T7, is that's where we're removing the trees, which we can do kind of as a right. We can cut the trees, but we're also going to pull the stumps. And as we pull the stumps and then smooth out the grade around it when the stumps come out, we're counting that entire area as a temporary disturbance. It's probably a larger area than what will really be disturbed, because obviously around trees like this, we're telling them not to disturb the soil under the trees. There will be tree protection fences, but we've counted the whole area to be very conservative. Continuing around, we have this permanent area here. Again, same thing. As the walk comes around, we have to ramp up to the bridge to cross the stream. We have some grading associated with that walkway, and so that's what that area is. Right now, that is 100% lawn. When we're done, it'll have the concrete sidewalk and lawn to either side when we're done. There's some really minor, these little T8 areas, really minor temporary disturbances. This is just from when we put in that dewatering area for the pond. There's some wetlands that area will flow through, and so there's a minor disturbance there. On this side, that P8 area, very small amount, again, for the footing construction for that bridge as we come across. So those are all the temporary and permanent areas of disturbance around the pond. And then obviously we have the pond itself as a temporary disturbance. We can't dredge the pond without disturbing it, so we count that as well. One thing I would point out is, it looks like a lot of disturbance. It is a high number. However, it's what's necessary in order to make the environmental and the access improvements for this project. And when we were hired now a while ago, the charge that you guys as a committee in the town gave us was to design a universally accessible trail around the pond and to make environmental improvements at the same time. And we've done our very best to stay outside the wetlands with anything that is a permanent thing that we can. We've minimized where we possibly can. And we've tried to do it as environmentally responsible as possible. And most of these disturbances, the numbers look high because they're existing lawn areas now. There'll be lawn areas when we're done. And we really do think that we're making an overall improvement to the environment, both from a water quality perspective and from a wetland quality perspective by the time we're done. But the only way to make those improvements to a wetland is to do disturbance within those wetlands.
Chad,
So-
can you go over P5? Did we miss that one at the top?
That's the P5 is the area all the way up here. That's that hatch. Again, that's the existing forebay.
Okay,
Where the sediment basin, if you will, where the pipes come in from the road. There's an area of wetland flagging inside of that area. And as we hog it out to enlarge it so it can function properly, those wetlands have to go away.
gotcha. Thank you.
It's definitely 100% a man-made thing. And as we've heard, the town has a current or kind of a standing permit to be able to maintain this and go in there and pull out all that sediment. So that gets disturbed regularly anyways.
Thanks.
Any other questions on this disturbance? I think if anything, it's just, again, if you hear from the public, it looks like a large number because there is quite a bit of area. I would focus on the fact that most of it is lawn areas being returned to lawn. We've really minimized the permanent where we can. And without doing these, minor disruptions that we need to, we couldn't do a universally accessible trail around the pond. And you couldn't even do a trail around the pond.
Right.
And the whole point was to allow the public to get down to the pond. Right now, a mom in a stroller can't get down there. Right. So when we talk universally accessible, we think handicapped people in wheelchairs, but it goes for all residents being able to get down, from here down and all the way around. So just wanted to point that out, make sure you guys are good and clear so that if you get questions from people when you're out on the street as to what you're doing, it makes sense. So I'll stop that one. I will jump back real quick just to finish the last couple sheets on this one. That was the disturbance. This is our planting plan. Again, I don't think anything earth shattering. The same trees we've had up here at the top, the same street trees that we've discussed last time. The only thing new here is we've identified all of the wet pollinator meadow plants and how we're going to plant them. We've done this consistent to how we've talked about it in the past, that we plant them in large swaths. I'll zoom in here a little bit. Right, so the plants are in large areas. This isn't a meadow where everything is mixed together and it's kind of this, abstract painting. This is big swaths of color. And this is so that hopefully as Public Works is maintaining this down the road, and they see the lobelia, this red flower in here, they'll know that anything that's not this bright red flower in this area is probably a weed, and they can go ahead and remove it. And that goes for whether it's Public Works or if we get a group of volunteers that really love this and want to maintain it. It's a lot easier to have one large area of a plant and that's supposed to be there as opposed to everything mixed together. And these have been, arranged so that things that are more moisture loving are closer to the pond. The things that are a little bit more dry tolerant are closer to the walk. And of course, we have some colors, some echinacea, things like that are along the walk as well too. But most of this stuff is all in that 2 to 3 foot high range so that you can see over it. Hopefully it makes a really nice palette of color through most of the blooming season. And then most likely in the winter, the whole thing gets mowed down to the ground so we can keep woodies and invasives from coming in, annually. We also have these zones along the edge of the pond. They correlate with these zones and plant lists over here, so that as we finish the pond regraded and it starts to fill back up, we have a planting plan for that edge condition to revegetate it with native plants along the edge. And this is our lovely detail of those habitat improvements, the basking log, the nesting island, the turtle rocks. This is a section of the boardwalk just so that you and the commission can kind of see there are areas. This is an area where we've regraded to make a better slope for things to come and go underneath the boardwalk without any obstacles. And as people are traversing across, you can obviously see into the water from one side and you can see into the wetland on the other side. We have thrown in some details for temporary goose protection. That is one of the issues that we will have as we plant everything along the fringe, trying to make sure that the geese don't come in and rip everything out that we just planted.
Thank God. They're horrible.
It won't look great. People will probably complain. Yeah. But it's what we need to do to protect it. And then this is our engineer's plan for the 4-bay reconstruction, the enlargement and how it's going to operate with some check dams and spillways, the filtration berm, and some of those details. So that's the whole set we've submitted. Does anybody want to see a particular sheet again? Otherwise, I'll stop sharing and we can talk about kind of schedule and big picture things.
Anyone?
I'm all set.
Okay, me too, Chad. Good.
Yeah.
Oh, did we lose Chrissy?
Yes.
It looks like we did.
She said she could only stay a half hour. Yeah.
Oh, I talked
Are
to
we,
her.
are we still legal?
Yeah, Jody's a member of the group.
Oh, Jody, perfect.
We had 4 before now. So.
So to give you an idea for tomorrow night, so we obviously submitted these plans. Our first official meeting with the commission is tomorrow night. I'll be there. Rich Snarsky, our wetland scientist, will be there, and Brandon, our civil engineer, will also be there. Ma'am, I don't know if you want to say anything or.
Yeah,
at the
I'll be
beginning.
there. I'll talk to Maureen tomorrow about what she wants from me for a statement, a short statement. Maureen, where is it going to be?
In the auditorium.
Okay, so you didn't move it over to the high school.
No, this is not the public hearing yet, and so I don't know if you even need to make a statement right now.
Okay.
More than
Well, I
likely-
think I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm going to come anyway, just to watch.
Show support in the audience, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, so our general outline is I'll do the introduction, I'll do the overview, I'll do the project intent and go over what the town hired us to do. We'll have Rich Snarsky go over his impact report. We did get a statement from him and we're asking him to elaborate on it a little bit during the meeting tomorrow night. And then Brandon will go through the technical aspects of both the wetland application as well as kind of the engineering behind everything. And then we'll answer questions from the commission. We'll be trying to make the point that there is no significant impact, or loss of wetlands, and that the wetland functionality and the wetland value hopefully improve through this project. That was the goal of the project, even though it does look like there's disturbance that it takes to get there. There is the likelihood, right, that we'll want to go to a public hearing on this. And that's up to the commission. We'll say that we are very, we're happy to do it. We're happy to be involved and have the public come in and have public input. It's a little bit of a debate as to if we just directly ask for it or if we kind of let and see how it goes with the commission and invite that.
Maureen, what do you think?
I think they're gonna hold a public hearing on something like this, so it's really a matter.
Okay,
As I advised Chad and Brandon today, to make certain that they identify what is, in terms of temporary, even some of the permanent areas, how much is restored. So that number that's up to like 9,000 square feet. Once you get through, well, then we're gonna plant it. And I think when you look on that sheet 8, the site planting plan, and try to get that big area where the trees are taken out off of it, that number will substantially decline, which would be good.
well, the crazy part is it's not a healthy wetlands now.
Right.
Because we are leaving a little ton of pollution in it, so it's, but as I said, Chad phrased it well. It takes work in the wetland to improve the wetland, and so much of the work that's being presented to the commission is temporary in order to dredge it, restore
Yeah.
it, and replant it, and that
To
is-
restore it, make it better.
That is the key,
Yeah.
and the benefit is public education, public access, and habitat. And
Right,
then the commission can weigh the impacts, long-term and short-term, against the gains and the benefits for the waters of town of Waterford. Their preliminary presentation that happened, and we had maybe 6 people, 5 people last meeting, just at the intro.
in the audience?
No, no.
No, nobody in the audience.
In the commission, they were enthusiastic about the project.
Okay.
So-
No, I know we talked about that there might be some people who show up eventually for a
When
public
we go to-
hearing.
Yeah, when we go to public hearing, it'll be noticed, yeah, and one of the people one of the recipients of the notice will be the condos across the street.
Okay,
Also,
think
there's people that signed that petition. Right? Hey, did you look into that, Mem?
I did,
Petition, okay.
I did.
I don't think they had all the facts either.
No, and I've contacted some of the people on that list that I knew, so we're in a public meeting, I'm not gonna say anymore. But I don't think a lot of those people are gonna show up for the public hearing, is my understanding. I could be surprised, but
The good thing about the public hearing is that this is the only opportunity folks are gonna have to comment on the plans themselves. We've had a lot of public involvement relative to the master planning effort, the 824, the Board of Selectmen endorsement, but this is folks, this is their one chance to see it and say something before it goes to bid and potential construction. So we really, it's a good opportunity to answer questions and to get the word out too.
right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we welcome the opportunity to have the public hearing for sure. I think it's a great opportunity to put it out there and hopefully get people to show up and learn more about the project.
So to that end, with the public hearing, there will be some scheduling elements that come into this because of the commission's schedule. There are other public hearings and other projects that will be taking up some of the regular meeting time. So it's possible that after tomorrow night, there will be a special meeting or a particular schedule laid out by the commission. And so as soon as we know what the commission does with that, Maureen can be in touch and we can get you aware of what the timing of that is going to look like. Staff and Chad, as we talked about some suggested dates for meetings of September 29th or October 6th, potentially October 20th. But again, that'll be the commission's final call.
Okay. So tomorrow night, they will decide after the presentation whether they need to go to public hearing.
That's very likely, yes.
And then the
Yeah.
next step would
And
be
the
to
date-
schedule that.
Well, and the date of the hearing, that will be decided.
Yeah.
The same motion.
Okay, okay.
What
And it
time
has
is,
to be, has to be far enough out that we can legally notice all the abutters and let the public know and things like that. So that's part of that scheduling issue.
That's what makes the 29th of September a little tight.
Yeah,
But
right.
we'll see. It depends. I want to make sure I have a quorum. So
Yeah. How many people sit on the commission, Maureen?
8,
8.
6 regulars, 2 alternates.
Okay. So let's say that we get through that process, we get to the public hearing, they rule in our favor, let's say, just say. What's the next step after that? Do we go out to bid after that? We have to go through the public hearing first?
Public hearing first, we still have to address Army Corps permitting. And Chad, I'm going to take us through that a little bit about the efforts to contact, perhaps have a meeting with the Corps representative to go through the project and see what level of review we're really going to be required to have. The person who will be assigned to this project was on leave through August 30th. And obviously Labor Day is out again. So we're just getting that contact solidified so we can get a date hopefully on the books for the Corps and for Deep to have a conversation with Maureen and Chad and the team here to talk about that issue. So that will also give us some direction.
And that
And that's
goes
what we're going back to the phasing.
concurrently with, that gets concurrent. That doesn't have to happen after. No,
Correct.
concurrent. Good. All right.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in there too to say that, so we have the wetlands, the local wetlands that we need approval. Then we need the DEP Army Corps approval. And then while we're doing all of those things, we're also still finishing the construction drawings of the whole park, right? And so these are our permit drawings. They're, 90% there, but there's just more detail that we have to continue to work out. As an example, one of those is we're meeting with our electrical engineer out there this Friday to look at, the service coming in and how we feed things, so that we have to have all those electrical plans and things like that finished out that aren't necessary for the permitting side of things, but are required obviously when we go out to bid. So we're continuing to work forward on all those construction drawings. So we'll be bid ready by the time we have all the permits in hand. And then we've also talked about phasing and, possible work that the town could possibly do, some pieces of it. So we're juggling all those balls at the same time, trying to figure out how we can push as much of the project forward once it's approved, as possible.
But we probably are not going to make a window for a fall dredge, correct?
I mean, our ideal time for dredging is coming up here within, about the time we get local wetlands approval is when we
Yeah.
should. We had that conversation earlier today that, if it's a good winter, it's conceivable we could be dredging
Okay.
during the winter. But I would, normally we consider the construction season, up to November. And if we get
Right.
permits in October,
By the time you
that
bid.
doesn't
Then
leave a
you
lot
have
of
to
time
bid.
for bidding and contractor selection and negotiation and
Yeah.
authorization and mobilization, all those lovely things. But that being said, we're looking for any and everything that the town can do and that we can do to kind of get things started without spinning our wheels, without duplicating effort or
Right.
having to fix things afterwards. But
That still rests on the core, sort of concurrence about the level of impact. And so that's the other piece too, that meeting is going to be critical.
yes.
And if
Wow.
for some reason if for some reason the dredge elements get deferred, there's area outside of the federal wetlands where we can still do work and flip the phasing to the concrete paths and some of that kind of stuff, which is what we talked about in the last meeting, that the inland wetlands will have seen every piece of impact and sort of hopefully flesh the whole project. So therefore we can, go forward with components of it that would not be subject to core review. And so there are alternatives to get some things done, but it just makes it a little more complicated.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're
Gotcha.
hoping that now that the person from the Corps is back, and that we have the schedule with local wetlands, we can use that pressure to make sure that they hopefully put us on a higher priority list. So that we can, it's really just even getting that first meeting. We're just trying to get the first meeting on site to say, this is what we're trying to do. And get them to agree that it's not a huge deal that needs to go through their full permit process. So that's the first step.
Okay. A lot of things going on. A lot of things for you guys to manage. I appreciate your hard work, all of you. Any more business for tonight?
So
No. Maureen, I'll see you tomorrow night. So if you decide that you will need me to say something, just send me give me a call or send me an email during the day. If not, I'll keep my mouth shut unless they ask.
And again, it's up to you. I mean, work with Chad that he may want to just introduce you as the chair of the.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll be there.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that just because you are the owner, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
this is not my project. I'm not the owner. We're working for you as the committee in the town.
right.
And so I think it's important that they know that.
Okay. I'll be there with bells on. All right, we need a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Good night,
Oh,
everybody.
when are we gonna meet again? Do we know yet? No, right?
We haven't set a date yet. If you want to get something on the books, we can, or if you want to wait to know when the
Well,
schedule
let's
of the
see,
public
yeah,
hearing is.
let's see when that public hearing is first, then we can always set the meeting either right before it or right after it.
Mhm.
All right, gang. Have a
All right.
good night.
Thanks.
you.
Good night.
Thanks, man. Good night.
Hey, guys.
Thanks, Dad.
Good night.